In this session, we are going to discuss about Newton's third law of motion. The working principle of rocket. The rocket propulsion is based on Newton's third law. Let's start our discussion. Newton's third law of motion. Newton's third law of motion is a simple law. For every action, there is equal and opposite reaction. If you are doing something, there will be some reaction for that. For example, if you are pushing on a wall, when we are pushing on a wall, we are exerting a force on the wall. At the same time, wall is exerting a force on your hand. It is known as Newton's third law of motion. Equal and opposite reaction. For every action, there is equal and opposite reaction. Let's discuss this with an example. There's a wall here and one person is pushing this wall. Here, when we are applying force on the wall, it is action. When the wall is exerting a force on your hand, it is reaction. So there are two forces, action, reaction. These action and reaction are not going to cancel each other because action is on the wall, reaction is on your hand. The action and reaction are exerting on different objects, so it is not going to be cancelled. The net force is not zero. It is opposite in direction and these forces are equal. So we will think these action and reactions are opposite in direction and they are equal. They will cancel each other. The net force will be zero. No, it's not like that. Action is exerting on one object and reaction is exerting on another object. When the fuel is burning, it is exerting a force in downward direction. Because of this force, the rocket will go up. It is reaction. These military people are firing. That time the gun is moving backward. You can feel the pressure on his body at the time of firing. Yes. At this moment, the gun is moving backward. When they are firing, the gun will move backward. It is the backward velocity is known as recoil velocity. We are going to discuss about that. It's a gun. At the time of firing, the gun will move backward. It is known as recoil velocity. Recoil of gun. The velocity is known as recoil velocity. At the time of firing, the gun will move backward. This phenomenon is known as recoil of gun. The velocity of gun is known as recoil velocity. Now the gun moved backward and this velocity is known as recoil velocity. This process is known as recoil of gun. When the gun is fired, it exerts a forward force on the bullet. The bullet exerts an equal and opposite reaction force on the gun. This results in recoil of the gun. The gun is exerting a forward force on the bullet. At the same time, the bullet is exerting a backward force on the gun. Velocity of gun is known as recoil velocity and velocity of bullet is known as muzzle velocity. Now we have learned about recoil of gun. Now we are going to compare the acceleration of gun and bullet. Just imagine bullet is going from the gun and the velocity will be around 540 meter per second. The speed is very high. 540 meter per second, sometime it is 300 meter per second. It depends on the gun. Then the velocity of gun, the acceleration of that gun is not equal. The acceleration of bullet is not equal to acceleration of gun. What is the reason behind it? Are they equal? Acceleration of bullet and acceleration of gun, are they equal? No, they are not equal. The acceleration of bullet is more compared to gun. Recoil velocity is very less and the muzzle velocity is very high. What is the reason behind it? We are going to discuss about the reason now. What is equation for force? We have the equation for force F equal to ma, right? It is equation for force. From this equation, can you make an equation for A? Yes, A will be equal to F by m. The mass is at denominator, right? If the mass is more, the acceleration will be less. Here, if the mass is more, the acceleration will be less. In the case of gun and bullet, which object is having more mass? Yes, gun is having more mass, then the acceleration will be less for gun. Acceleration will be more for bullet because of the less mass. We can conclude that the acceleration depends on the mass, and the mass of gun is more compared to bullet. The acceleration will be less for gun and the acceleration will be more for bullet. So what is Newton's third law? Newton's third law states that if there is an action, there will be equal and opposite reaction. And this equal and opposite reaction, they are not going to cancel each other because they are acting in different objects. Recoil velocity is the velocity of gun. At the time of firing, the gun will move backward. That velocity of gun is known as recoil velocity. The velocity of bullet is known as, the forward velocity is known as muzzle velocity. The acceleration is different for gun and bullet because of the difference in mass. Gun is massive than bullet. Subscribe our channel for getting instant notification of sample paper solution, and support us for providing free online classes to everyone. www.winpointonlineclasses.com